If you've been watching television these days, you've noticed what might be called a Me Too moment. On plenty of shows around, not only is there the diverse cast that people have been calling for generations, to be fair, but there's also a Me Too moment. There's literally within the plot line and shows as diverse as a sitcom to a drama for kids, for adults, about being safe and having, bodily integrity and not having people invade that. I recently saw Will and Grace, and Grace comes out to her father about how his best friend had raped her when she was 15 years old. She was working for him. The father got her a job, and this happened to her, and she couldn't tell him, and she felt betrayed by him. And the moral of the story is that she needed the apology, she needed the reconciliation with her father, not particularly with the perpetrator, but she had constructed in her mind that it was her father's fault because he had failed to protect her. And so that kind of healing that was brought about by both of them, of course, sitcoms are really good for that because they power through in 22 minutes all of this jive. I mean, there's something as heavy as this woman coming out 30 years later, and he, of course, asked her, have you told anyone? And it comes out again within the storyline that she had told her mother, and he was proud that she had had someone, a best friend, to share that with, and she hadn't had to carry that burden alone. Of course, in the now we can say the post-Kavanaugh era, this is also one of the points that was driven home in the grilling that she received is why are you coming out about this now, and therefore it can't be true, just to undermine her credibility and anything to distract from whether or not what she was saying was true, and not just why is she saying it now and why didn't she do something years ago. And so there are many shows that specifically address that point as well. Why is it that you're saying this just now? Who have you told all along the line? And so when I say this is a Me Too moment, I'm not just saying that they're having token sexual assault, rape, and that sort of thing come out, but they're really giving audiences the opportunity to see the characters engage in dialogue about these issues. In this instance, in Will and Grace, she, of course, is a grown woman talking to her senior citizen dad over, coffee, going to visit the grave of her mother. When you think about another, okay, what's another? So Sabrina, that's popular now. Sabrina, the reboot of the '90s show, Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, which of course, this witchcraft theme is a popular one in headlining this otherness that we also contend with, and which is also the issue here, is where do women sit as the other in society when their bodily integrity is so easily laughed at, as many shows did with sexual assault of women's bodies. So Sabrina has also one of these storylines. Bullying has long since come into the language of the teenage and high school genre of movies. We think even from the days of Tyler Clementi, excuse me. We've seen that narrative addressed in all teenage television, movies, and that sort of thing. And now the bullies really are not the cool guys. The bullying itself gives the other students something to rally around, which is exactly what happens in the reboot of Sabrina, where her best friend, part of her crew, is now a transgender person. She's a classmate and she prefers to be called a boy, and she loves and giggles when there are people who simply address her as male. What's interesting about it is that the bullies in the school raise her shirt to see if she's to check her gender, and this is the first thing that sets Sabrina off on the whole series. She's now the protector of the minority, and that's like any other superhero narrative. What's different now, of course, is that she's protecting a transgender classmate from the jocks. So this Me Too movement has, as an intersectional movement, where it has to, by nature, address their intersectionality. In Sabrina, for example, this is a coal mining town. This is a coal miner's daughter. And it has to address this intersectionality of class, of race, of religion, just as much as America has been through the past just 10 days of hate crimes that were particularly over these culture wars. And so pop culture is addressing it, and it's interesting to see. They say liberal Hollywood, and it's It's even been called a Jewish conspiracy in the past, Hollywood. This same popularist movement that we see now, the resurgent is using that language that we saw earlier. And so perhaps we are in, well, we know that we're in a golden age of television, and it's interesting to be embraced within it, that our fullness today, that you have intersectional, that, you know, from the days of Glee, you have a crowd sourced character that gets on the show who is a Black, transgender, large sized, screaming queen who has its own, who has um, her own backstory within the show. This is what's new. And for a lot of people who are used to the mainstream, this will feel like a cultural assault. This will feel like you're shoving it down our throat, like people said after Oscar So White. Well, that's what happened. You started to actually see, well, there are people of color all around you. We just hadn't seen them. And so when we now can see the real rainbow around us, yeah, it feels like change, but we've been here all along. You know, when you have a transgender character in every show, when you have a gay, you know, character and not just a stock character, but again, someone who has their own backstory, who passes the Bechdel test, you know, who has discussions that with other characters like them that have nothing to do with going on with what's going on with the main central character, even if that main central character is a heteronormative white, you know, middle class character. So you see all these things happening now, and this perhaps feels like a cultural assault to those who are most accustomed to traditional values. This isn't to say that those traditional values are under assault, because we're not coming to get you, we're not after you. We're saying we are a part of the global community. So enjoy cyber television. See you in cyberspace.